This video is sponsored by Phoenix Pharos cards. If you need supplies of singles or splits for Cardfight Vanguard, especially the ones in the video, do check out Phoenix Pharos cards today, and as a bonus, use the promo code MetaNerd to get an amazing 5% discount. And with that being said, let's get on with the video. Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the MetaNerd channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Willdress. In this video, we will be going through my deck profile for Viamance Bruce post DBT09. After a lot and I mean a lot of testing, as well as, keep switching out stuff here and there, I come to conclusion the deck profile that we have today. And to my surprise, the deck actually is very, very scary in a sense where, the power is just ridiculous. For people who have play tested with me, you guys already know how disgusting the power level is for this current Bruce. Although not comparable to Viamance Bruce, the old Bruce, for this build, I think it's going to be super disgusting. Imagine almost the same power level as Viamance Bruce, but on turn 3. It's disgusting. Without further ado, let's take a look at what my deck profile for Viamance Bruce post DBT09 looks like. So here is the overall build that you guys can see. As opposed to the draft build I recommend you guys playing the other video, this one you basically just double down on the 4 attacks. You don't really want to go to the 5 attacks, which will basically change how you want to approach the deck build. You don't use as much counterblast as the 5 attack variant, and you are not really that piece reliant as compared to the 5 attack deck. So in this deck, as you guys can see, it's more or less pretty much straightforward. You basically want to run as many attackers as you can, although each and every pieces in this deck, they fulfill a slightly different role in the deck. The main selling point of this deck is Mabel. Mabel here, it provides triple drive to Viamance Bruce on attack, and since you are final rush and a turn early, it basically makes your Vanguard attack to be much more deadlier. So it's actually a very, very nice card. Although I did mention in the other video saying that because at that point I'm basically focused on the 5 attack, which will use up to 3 counterblast. Now that we are only focused on 4 attacks, the counterblast usage just kind of goes down. It actually makes sense that we actually run Mabel here. The rest is pretty much the same. I will explain more once we get further down into the video. But this is basically what the whole deck will look like. Feel free to pause and take a picture, and of course do test it out yourself. It's actually a very, very fun deck. So for general game plan of this deck is that it's a very simple as well as violent offense, because the power level, to be honest, is pretty much disgusting. You don't really use a lot of resources to reach that power level, and of course this power level is not including whatever order card that we have before when we are still playing Viamance Bruce. So it basically double downs on the 4 attacks, so which means that each and every attack that you dishes out is going to be very, very big. At least 2 cards to guard, even if you pay G. Well, unless of course if the center column is boosted by Mabel and you give Bruce the triple drive, then your opponent can just Elementaria Sanctitude, and that's only 1 card to guard. But other than that, each and every attack that you make is going to be 2 cards, at least 2 cards to guard. So as mentioned here, the rear guard power column is going to be 33 minimum. Of course, with the Greg, the grade 3 countercharger for Bruce, it's going to be a 31k column. But then you will not be attacking with that column first, because you are going to restand anyway, so you might as well just restand the one that hits magic numbers. So Greg could potentially go up to 41k, depends if you get trigger or not. So it's actually still 2 cards to guard. Unlike the Viamance Bruce, we are able to actually do stuff on the turn 3. So even if you are only attacking for 3 times, if you go first, you are still getting that triple drive from Mabel. At the maximum, you'll probably only be using 2 counterblasts every single turn, 1 from Bruce himself and 1 from Mabel. If you don't use Mabel, then it's just gonna be 1 counterblast every single turn. Yes, you do still use counterblast for Jamil, but then again, if you have Greg, Jamil's skill is basically just free. Very disgusting. And surprisingly, this Bruce is actually more defensive than Viamance Bruce, because you have cards that gain shield value. For example, Jamil, Trish, as well as Stephanie. These 3 cards helps with your defense tremendously, and it's actually very annoying for the opponent to deal with if they do not have retiring skill. If you don't touch the board of Bruce, you will be in very, very big trouble, because their power level is just insane. So on with the deck list breakdown. First off is the trigger lineup. I am running a heavy crit setup because power isn't really that much of an issue. So since we are playing triple drive, it actually makes sense to play a heavy crit setup. Although I do run slightly more draws because I still want to see some key pieces. And since you do have like a lot of very high shield value cards, it's okay to run a 4 draw, to be honest. So very nice. I think this one is the more optimal trigger lineup to be run, although you could still run the front. But if you run the front, it's more likely that you're gonna run Eden. For overtrigger, I am running the Dark States overtrigger, but you could consider Obarai, because just giving double 1 million power is disgusting. Especially if you are using Eden, because Eden, when on restand, he gets a crit. So if you give the million, it's just disgusting. So you could consider run front. So it's a more towards rainbow setup, which will of course increase your defensive even more, because 20k fronts is just disgusting. And not to mention, the front trigger are Diabolos, so very nice combo. So for the ace players that are in this deck that usually want to be called in the front row to attack, these 3 cards: Megan, Jamil, as well as Greg. I don't really need to introduce Megan. Megan is just stupid in any deck that basically restands, because you know, she just gains power for every time she attacks. She is going to be like the main powerhouse of this deck if you don't get Jamil or Greg. I mean, even if the final turn you have her, is just gonna be disgusting. Even on turn 3, this card is still a 20k attacker, which is disgusting. Jamil is pretty much self-explanatory. She is a 20k base attacker. Even on the opponent's turn, he's also a 10k interceptor. So it's actually very annoying to have him in the front row from the opponent's perspective, because not only is this card a 20k base, it's not very easy to get rid of. He's also a 10k shield. My opponent usually wants to attack him, but then again, he is at 20k base. So it's very hard for you to get rid of Jamil. And not to mention, Jamil has that bonus of Happy New, Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 1, and Superior Call something from to the field. It's actually a very nice bonus, and it actually encourages you to intercept him away if you have Jamil in your hand. Of course, the main attacker is still going to be Jamil, because Megan doesn't really do much other than, you know, attacking. She is still great, but Jamil has more utility than Megan, if you ask me. As for Greg is there for you to, you know, if you find yourself running low on Counterblast, then Greg is basically your guy. You don't really use a lot of soul in this deck. You basically just dump every single soul to Greg's skill. And since you are only using 2 Counterblasts, yeah, Greg is just disgusting. So every turn you just Soul Blast to get back that 1 counter charge. I'm telling you, this card is just really good. It's just good. Each of these cards, although they are the same, but they are different in terms of the value that they bring to the deck. So these 3 are most of the time going to be in your front row. For offensive support, means that the cards that actually provides you with more power or basically get more stuff are all these 4 cards. Trish is going to be 13k. Most of your great ones are 13k boosters, so really good. And not to mention, Trish here is still a 10k shield. It's actually very nice to draw into her in the late game, because she is a 10k shield. So initially, I'm very skeptical to run this card, but due to the limited good Diabolos unit, I think Trish is very decent. And most of the time, if I draw into her, if I haven't ride into Bruce, probably I would just discard her because she does not really do anything other than being a great 13k booster. I mean, you can call her early, but then again, you don't really want to call her early because Bruce is technically still a Counterblast hungry deck, so you might as well just keep her in your hand. And if you haven't ride into Bruce, you might as well just discard her because she really doesn't do anything until you go into Final Rush. That is. For Stephanie, I think the anime already let you know how good Stephanie is. Giving the 5k to anything in the front row is just too good. Even on the opponent turn, it basically makes Bruce an 18k base Vanguard, which is going to be very annoying for certain matchups. For example, Maelstrom, as well as basically decks that actually does like very small attacks. Yeah, 18k base just basically don't need to throw as many hands to guard. So it's actually a very nice card to be played inside this deck. And she is a 13k boost in a sense, so very nice. Mabel is without a doubt really good support in this deck. She does provide Bruce with triple drive. It's actually really disgusting, but unfortunately, of course, Elementaria Sanctitude is a thing, so there's really nothing much you can do about it. But then again, the rear guards are going to be huge, so they more than make up for, you know, the Elementaria Sanctitude stuff. So really nice. And Steve is here because I want to basically give Steve a special shout out, because for sure Steve is in your soul. Most of the time you will be calling Steve from Jamil's skill. Steve will definitely be on the field. Ever since the beginning of Vanguard, I mean Overdress, Steve is actually a very nice great one to be called from the soul, be it from Leonard's skill, Julian's skill. Yeah, it's better than you calling Richard, right? So yeah, I want to give Steve a special shout out because Steve is Steve. he's very, very good, despite the name being bad. For defensive players, of course, it's those three, because these three are just really, really good. As mentioned before, even if you draw into this in the late game, they are Diabolos unit 2. You can just call them out for offense, especially Jamil, since he's able to fetch something from the soul to the rearguard circle. So it's actually very, very nice. They do provide you with defensive capabilities, which again in certain matchup is going to be very, very annoying. And as you can already see, each and every card within this deck plays a role. Very, very nice utility in terms of, you know, what Bruce wants to do in this new deck. So yeah, very, very nice. So for the backup that you can basically play in this deck is of course going to be Eden, Julian, Leonard, as well as Ivanka. These four are options for you to basically consider running in this deck. Eden, without a doubt, could be replacing Megan if you do play front, because he's just really, really good. But the only problem for Eden is that Eden is like a card that basically is fighting for the front row. So your front row is technically going to be like Jamil or Greg. So if you have enough counterblast, then maybe you can call him out. But most of the time, I just feels like he's fighting for that slot just a little bit too much. And what's more, running Megan over Eden here is because Megan is going to be at 20k and Eden is going to be at 15k. So even if you rush early and try to basically pressure your opponent into guarding him, he's going to be at 15k. So alongside Stephanie, it's going to be at 28k. It's still okay, but then again, not really that great if you ask me, because power level isn't really as good as Megan. Megan is just a beast. There's a really fine line between a beast and a... I mean, most of my training partners, they call her so nothing really much I can do about it. For Julian, I think Julian doesn't really do as much as Jamil, because Jamil is technically the same as Julian, but Jamil is a grade 2 and this is a grade 3. And what's more, most of the time you'll find your soul to not have like really good unit. I don't think Julian is good for this build, unless of course you are playing Ivanka. If you're playing Julian, then you might want to put in Ivanka, but due to the fact that it's not really consistent where you can basically get your big hitters to attack hit, because think of it this way, if you're playing the 5 attack combo, most people will just guard the 2 attacks that you will be doing to basically have that 5 attack combo, and they just no guard the rest, which is the Vanguard as well as Julian column. Not really that great if you ask me. So Julian and Ivanka is still on backup for now, because they don't really do much, because if they don't attack hit, your hand size is just gonna drop down and down and down for some reason. For Leonard is interesting, because Leonard, it does helps with clearing out the board. For example, like some of the pesky grade 1s at the back, you wanted them gone, you could use Leonard, but Leonard actually do more bad than good. Not only is he 5k lesser than Megan, the on-hit skill is actually mandatory, which in some cases can be very, very detrimental. These 4 are backup for now, as they don't really bring a lot of value, with the exception of maybe Eden. Eden does have value in terms of like early game rushes, but still I think due to the fact that it's hit slightly lesser and is more reliant on you drive checking the triggers, I don't think Eden makes the cut just yet. Who knows, Bishop might just introduce a new card that basically changed everything. And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section on what do you think of my deck profile. Is there any cards that you think might be good for this deck, or do you agree with the choices I make for this deck profile? Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and of course during the bell notification icon so that you don't miss a video I upload. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.